I was walking back through the center of town after another long day. We'd been checking old beams, measuring cracks, making notes about things that leaned more than they should. My shoulders were stiff and my head felt foggy from staring at numbers too long. The air, though, warm, flat, calm, made the whole place feel slower, softer. Like the town was settling into itself before the sun even touched the hills. Nothing strange, nothing tense, just another late afternoon. The grocery store had one light on inside, dim and yellow. The owner dragged the metal gate halfway down, pausing like he'd done it at the same time every day of his life. A guy sweeping dust off the steps didn't glance up when I passed him. A woman locking her shop door moved with this steady, familiar rhythm, like muscle memory. Everyone moved like that, synced, predictable. A quiet loop I'd started to recognize after only a few days here. Maybe that's why the shift hit so hard. The bell rang late. 40 seconds isn't much, not enough for anyone else to notice, but I'd been hearing it from the moment we arrived. Same time every day, clean, exact. Today, it dragged behind itself, like someone hesitated before pulling the rope. It felt wrong the moment the sound hit the street. I stopped without meaning to. The bell had this muffled edge to it, like it came from deeper inside the tower instead of the top. I looked up. The tower window was darker than usual. No sign of George, no outline, no movement, just a square of shadow that didn't look like the one I'd seen yesterday. Across the street, a dog trotted along the sidewalk. Its nails tapped the concrete in a steady rhythm, then stopped. It looked toward the tower, stood still, shoulders tight. Then it turned around and walked the other way without a sound. No bark, no warning, just leaving. Nobody else reacted. A man locked the diner door and flicked off the sign. Someone laughed from inside the laundromat. A truck rolled past, the driver staring straight ahead. The whole town carried on like the bell had rung exactly on time, like nothing had shifted at all. I waited a moment, listening, expecting something else to follow, a second ring maybe, or a voice calling out. But the sound faded and everything fell back into its usual rhythm. Smooth, ordinary, almost too ordinary. I told myself not to dwell on it. Bells slip, people make mistakes, clocks drift, a rope sticks, 100 simple reasons. But the feeling stayed, small, sharp, like an itch behind the eyes that wouldn't blink away. I'd only been here a few days, but I already knew that bell. And that day, it wasn't right. I'd been in the town long enough to fall into a kind of lazy routine. Wake up early, eat whatever breakfast we could throw together, load the gear into the rental, and drive out to whatever old structure needed measuring that day. Most of it was simple work. Angles, cracks, rust, tilt, soil pressure. Nothing dramatic. Just the slow kind of surveying you do for a senior project when you're trying to make a deadline and stretch a tiny travel budget. It was me, Austin, and Aaron. 3 students pretending we knew more than we did. Austin handled most of the equipment because he liked being in charge of anything that beeped or blinked. Aaron kept the notes organized, pages always neat and squared off. I floated somewhere in the middle, trying to keep the numbers straight and the group moving. We spent our days crawling under old bridges, checking the shifts in leaning power poles, and poking around storage sheds that hadn't been touched in years. Half the time it felt like we were documenting a town that had stopped growing long before we were born. The Airbnb we'd rented sat near the edge of town. It used to be someone's guest house, or maybe a storage room, judging by the smell of dust and old wood. The owner barely said anything when we checked in, just handed us the keys, nodded once, and pointed to the driveway like he didn't want to linger in conversation. We didn't think much of it. Most people here seemed quiet in a way that wasn't unfriendly, just economical. But the warning started almost immediately. They were gentle at first. A woman leaving the bakery looked over at us and said, almost as if she couldn't help it, "Don't be outside after 6. A man fixing a fence near the road we were surveying said, without turning his head, "When the bell rings, go home." No alarm in their voices, no tension, just facts dropped into the air like they were talking about the weather. Each time it happened, the tone was the same, soft, steady, practiced. Aaron took them seriously. He always nodded, like the polite student he was. Austin rolled his eyes after every warning. I didn't know what to do with them. You hear something often enough and it stops sounding strange, even when it should. One afternoon, we were hauling equipment back to the car when a house across the street pulled its curtains closed. The sun was still high. Too early. Way too early. I paused, watching the fabric fall into place. Aaron noticed it too. Austin didn't, or pretended not to. The moment passed, and we kept going. A day later, I ran into George outside the church. He was checking something near the side door, bending a little slower than a man his age should have to. I thought maybe he'd tell me something useful if I asked right. I walked over. "Why does everyone—" I started. He didn't let me finish. "Just go home." Then he turned away, heavy and tired, like the words cost him something. I stood there for a second, waiting for him to add more, but he didn't look back. People here had this way of closing conversations as firmly as they closed their curtains. At the Airbnb, we'd sometimes hear the neighbor mention Sam in casual, clipped sentences. He used to live a few doors down. He walked everywhere, friendly, talked to everyone. Then one night he didn't come back. That was the end of the story every time. No pauses, no details. Like it wasn't even tragic, just something that happened and then stopped being talked about. By the fourth evening, Austin was restless. He wasn't built for quiet towns or repetitive schedules. He wanted noise, something different, something not tied to measurements and data sheets. He leaned against the counter and said he wanted to see what a small-town bar is like compared to the city. He said it 3 times before either of us responded. Aaron hesitated first. I hesitated next. Eventually we said yes because saying no felt harder than going. Tony's bar sat near the center of town. Warm lights, old stools, wood counters rubbed smooth by decades of elbows. Tony greeted us with a smile that felt real, but his eyes flicked between us and the clock above the bar more often than they should. Every couple of minutes he checked it again, tapping the counter with his thumb. We ordered drinks. Austin joked. Aaron relaxed a little. The place felt normal, until it didn't. People at nearby tables kept glancing at the door. Someone tightened their jacket even though it wasn't cold. Tony wiped a glass, looked at the clock again, and then over at us like he was making sure we weren't planning to stay long. The minute hand edged closer to 5:30, and the room shifted. Not loudly, not all at once, just subtly. Chairs scraped, voices dimmed. A quiet tension rolled through the space, something practiced, something familiar to everyone except us. That was when I realized the bell hadn't rung yet, and everyone was waiting. The bell hit at 5:30 p.m., and the entire bar shifted like someone had flipped a switch. Conversations died mid-sentence. Chairs dragged back all at once. People finished their drinks in fast, practiced motions. The warmth of the room drained out, replaced by a quiet, urgent efficiency that didn't match the easy rhythm we'd seen earlier. Every local stood up, every one of them. Plates were cleared, bills were paid, glasses placed upside down on tables. No one lingered, no one stalled. They all moved like this was something they did every single day at exactly this time. Only the 3 of us stayed seated. Aaron held his glass halfway to his mouth, frozen. My hands were still on the table. Austin leaned back, eyebrows raised like he was watching a prank unfold. "Seriously?" he said. Tony stepped up to us so fast I didn't see him cross the room. His voice stayed even, but there was no softness in it. You need to go now, Austin huffed. It's not even 6. Tony didn't blink, didn't adjust his posture. Go home. 4 quiet words, a tone that left no room for interpretation. He didn't wait for us to nod. The moment we walked out, he locked the door behind us with one quick motion, like he'd been waiting for that exact second. Outside, the shift was even sharper. The street had emptied. A man hurried across his yard, pulling his fence gate shut with a clank. A woman yanked her curtains closed with a single sweeping motion. Porch lights flicked on early. The shadows stretched long across the street, even though the sun still floated above the ridge. Every house looked like it was bracing for something we couldn't see. Austin muttered the entire walk to the car. Something about rural paranoia, weird village rules. Nobody tells me when to go home. His voice tried to stay mocking, but every time he glanced at the darkening sky, it trembled at the edges. We got into the car. He started the engine. The tires crunched over gravel as we pulled away from the bar. The main road toward our Airbnb was narrow, curving along patches of tall grass and crooked wooden fences. The sun slid lower, brushing the tops of the hills. Then it happened fast. An animal shot out from the brush, just a blur of fur and instinct. Austin jerked the wheel hard. The car skidded sideways. Gravel spat across the road. We slammed into a leaning power pole with a dull, heavy impact that shook the entire frame. The pole shuddered overhead but didn't fall. The engine sputtered, coughed, and died. The headlights blinked once, then died with it. Silence washed over the road. Not nighttime silence, not quiet Tuan silence, a heavier kind, a vacuum kind, something that pressed in on the ears. Austin tried the ignition again, then again. Nothing. Aaron pulled out his phone. The screen showed no service. Mine did too. Austin lifted his phone, moved it around like that would help, but it showed the same thing. We stood in the road for a moment, waiting for a breeze or a bird or a distant car. Nothing came. The air felt sealed. We needed shelter before full dark, and the road back was too far to walk. Then I remembered the shed. We'd surveyed it earlier that day, a storage shed near a dirt path, old but standing, probably abandoned, bent frame, warped wood but not collapsed. Perfect for shelter if nothing better existed. We grabbed what we needed from the car and headed down the narrow path toward it. Grass brushed our legs. The air cooled fast. The shed sat half sunk into the earth like it was tired, but still holding on. When I pushed the door, it groaned out a long, complaining sound that echoed too much in the still air. Inside, the air was cool and damp. Dust floated in the fading light. The place smelled like rust and wet earth. Scrape marks curved across the wood floor, some long, some short, none matching tools or animals I recognized. Old tires leaned in a stack. A rusted barrel sat on its side against the far wall. We pulled together what we could find. Pieces of wood, the tires, a broken pallet, to create a loose barricade. It wasn't much, but doing something with our hands helped. It made the silence feel less like a living thing. Then it started. A soft noise from the back wall, a controlled rhythm, 2 quick knocks, a short pause, 2 more. We all looked toward the same dark corner. Aaron straightened. Austin exhaled sharply, annoyed but uneasy. We waited. A few minutes passed, then it came again. Different timbre. Exact same rhythm. Tap, tap, silence, tap, tap again. Perfect spacing. Aaron whispered something under his breath. Austin rolled his shoulders like he wanted to dismiss it, but couldn't quite do it. The last of the sun dimmed outside. The shed grew darker. I checked my phone again. The screen flickered. The time jumped forward 18 minutes, then froze, then snapped back to the correct time as if it corrected itself. Aaron saw the whole thing over my shoulder and swallowed hard. Austin shrugged, but his jaw tightened. We didn't talk after that. The sun dipped lower, touching the ridge at a sharp angle, the exact moment light starts to fail. And right on that mark, the sound happened a third time. Slow this time, measured, like it was waiting. 2 knocks, a pause, 2 more. Perfect rhythm, perfect timing, perfectly wrong. My breath caught in my throat. The hairs on my arms lifted. Austin shifted his weight from one foot to the other, eyes locked on the corner of the shed. Aaron slowly lowered his clipboard like it weighed more than it should. I wanted to explain it. I wanted any explanation to fit. A loose board, metal cooling, a small animal trapped in the wall. But everything about the sound was too exact, too steady, too patient. Patterns only form when something is repeating on purpose. The light faded another shade. The knocking didn't change. It didn't get louder. It didn't get closer. It didn't speed up. It just kept time. Kept time with the dying light. Kept time with the drop in temperature. Kept time with something we didn't understand. A pattern means intention, and intention means something making it. The sun finally slipped fully behind the ridge, and the shed went dark. The pattern didn't stop. Not random, not natural, not a mistake. Something was knocking, and whatever it was waiting for night. The light drained from the shed faster than it should have. 1 second, we had the last thin strip of orange bleeding through the cracks in the boards, and the next it was gone, swallowed like the sun had been yanked out of the sky instead of gently setting. It wasn't darkness right away, but something close, something heavy, something that didn't belong to a normal sunset. Then the silence settled. Not nighttime quiet, not rural quiet, something deeper. I waited for a breeze to slip through the boards. None came. I waited for the chirp of a cricket. Nothing. I strained to hear a car far off on the highway. Nothing at all. It wasn't just sound missing. It was the presence of sound missing, as if the world outside the shed had been put on pause. The air thickened. My breathing felt too loud, like it didn't fit inside the room. Aaron pressed closer to the wall. Austin stood near the door, shifting his weight, trying to act like he wasn't unsettled. But the silence clung to him too. You could see it in the way he swallowed, in the way his jaw twitched. I checked my phone again. Still no service. Still the same dead screen. Still the same quiet. I tried to listen for a pattern, something to explain the lack of anything. But the space around us felt sealed, like someone had closed a glass lid over the whole shed and cut us off from whatever was happening outside. Then it started. A sound broke through the silence, not loud, not fast, just sudden enough to hit like a cold hand on the back of the neck. A voice, my mother's voice, soft, warm, wrong. Alex, only my name, nothing else, not a sentence, not even a question. Just the way she said it, just enough familiar to make my chest tighten, just enough off to make the skin on my arms lift. The tone was strained, like someone pulling the sound from a memory instead of speaking it. Aaron stiffened. I turned toward him, but he was already looking at the far door. His eyes were wide, not scared yet, but confused. He mouthed a name I recognized. Sam. He wasn't saying it. He was hearing it. Somewhere outside the shed, someone was calling to him in Sam's voice. A flat imitation, a stretched-out copy, not grieving, not scared, just calling. Then Austin's head jerked toward the open crack near the top of the door. His posture changed in a heartbeat, from irritated to alert like he'd been yanked upright by a string. He whispered, not for us, but for himself. No. Then a laugh drifted through the open slats, not a loud laugh, not a joyful one, something thin, stretched, crooked. A voice calling his name followed it. Not my mother, not Sam, something else. Austin took a step closer to the door. "Austin, don't," Aaron said under his breath. He didn't hear him, or he didn't care. The voice outside called his name again, low, dragged out, almost playful. It crawled along the boards like it was trying to slide under them. Austin stepped out before we could stop him. He pushed the door open with one hand and stepped into the dim yard, his silhouette cut against the weak moonlight leaking behind the ridge. He looked both ways, shoulders stiff, jaw clenched. The air outside was darker than the sky should have allowed. The ground swallowed most of the light. I moved toward him. "Get back," I shouted. Aaron's voice cut right after mine. "Inside." Those were the only two lines we managed, the only two we were allowed. Austin hesitated, only for a breath. Then he turned around and came back inside, not because he wanted to, but because the cold outside pressed up against him. You could see it, the moment he realized something was wrong in a way he couldn't joke about. He closed the door halfway, not all the way, not enough. He leaned against the wall, trying to pretend it didn't shake him. Then the air changed again. It didn't get colder, it didn't get warmer. It felt like someone else had stepped into the shed. Not through the door, not through the wall, just into the space. I felt a pressure around my throat, not choking at first, just a firm hold, like someone cupping a hand around my neck to get my attention. Then it tightened. My breath caught. My hands flew up, grabbing nothing. I couldn't see anything. I couldn't touch anything. But the pressure stayed. Cold, precise, intentional. I heard Aaron gasp. Not because of me, but because something tugged the back of his shirt. A quick jerk, hard enough to pull him off balance. He stumbled forward into a stack of tires. Austin hissed quietly and swatted at the air near his face. Later, he would say something brushed him, something thin, like strands of cold hair or fingers without shape. None of us spoke. None of us understood. The silence broke in tiny, fractured pieces, breathing, movement, the echo of something shuffling outside the walls. It wasn't full noise. It was noise pretending not to be noise. Then, everything stopped. Not gradually, not naturally, just stopped. The pressure on my throat vanished. Aaron's shirt stopped pulling. Austin stopped swatting. Even the air froze. I took a breath too loud for the size of the shed. It echoed off the walls. No one else moved. The calm inside the shed felt staged, like something had paused us to watch what we'd do next. We didn't do anything. Aaron lifted his flashlight with a shaking hand. The beam was weak, batteries dying, but he aimed it toward the corner where the first knocking had come from. The light hit something. Not clearly, not long, just enough. A shape pulled back into the dark as if retreating, not quickly, slowly, with intention. Like it didn't care if we saw the outline of a long limb or the curve of something that wasn't shaped like a human shoulder. The beam flickered. Aaron lowered it. No one spoke. Then Austin vanished. Not with a scream, not with a sound. He'd been standing near the half-closed door, eyes still adjusting to the dark. One moment he was there, the next, he wasn't. Just gone. His shadow didn't even linger. The space he'd been occupying felt empty in a way that made my stomach twist. "Austin?" I whispered before I could stop myself. Nothing answered. Not the shed, not the air, not the thing outside. Aaron stepped forward, but I grabbed his arm. We both knew we weren't going out there. Not into that dark, not into whatever had taken him without a sound. The silence returned, crawling up the walls, filling every gap between our breaths. Then, a distant rumble. Low at first, almost imagined, then stronger, then bright. Headlights cut across the field. Two beams of white light washed over the dry grass, slicing through the darkness with a sharpness that burned into my eyes. For the first time since sunset, the shed had color again, shape again, space again. The rumble grew as the engine closed in. Someone was coming, someone who knew exactly where to go. I stepped toward the doorway. The headlights grew brighter. And for one brief second, just before the truck reached us, I felt the darkness behind the shed shift, not rushing, not hiding, just moving aside, like it was making room. The lights washed over the door, and the shed finally felt real again. The truck came through the darkness like a piece of daylight torn loose and forced into the night. I didn't understand how it found the shed. There was no road leading directly to it, only a thin path of crushed grass and uneven ground. But the headlights found us anyway, cutting a narrow corridor of safety through everything that moved just outside our sight. It wasn't just headlights. As it approached, I saw the rest of it. Floodlights, dozens of them, bolted to every surface of the truck, front, sides, roof, even the back bumper, angled outward in a wide halo. The beams overlapped, layered, intensified. The light didn't just shine, it pressed outward, it shoved at the dark. The engine growled low as the truck slowed near the shed. Gravel scattered under the tires, dust lifted in a glowing cloud. For a second, I felt warmth on my face, warmth from the light alone, and something in the air loosened. The pressure that had been coiled around the shed since the sun went down weakened just a fraction, but enough for me to breathe without thinking about it. Aaron stepped beside me, chest heaving, eyes locked on the lights like they were the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Then I saw something behind the glow, something pulling away. A shape at the far edge of the floodlights, tall, too tall, with limbs that didn't settle into one form. Long arms, a narrow stretch of something like a torso, movement that didn't follow bone or muscle. It shifted the way water shifts, sliding, folding, bending, but never holding still. The moment the light hit it, the shape recoiled, dragging itself backward into the dark with a shiver that made my skin crawl. It didn't flee. It just stepped out of reach, waiting. The truck door opened with a harsh metal creak. A silhouette stepped out, a heavy figure, shoulders drawn down, posture tired in a way that felt older than the town itself. George. The same man who had rung the bell, the same man who had told me to go home without explaining anything. He didn't look surprised to see us. He didn't look angry. He didn't even look rushed. He just looked resigned. A beam of the floodlights followed him as he walked toward us, boots crunching through the dirt. He didn't call out. He didn't wave. He didn't ask where Austin was. His eyes scanned the tree line, the broken shed, the shadows thickening in every direction. When he got close enough, he finally spoke. "Stay in the light." 4 words, flat, not a warning, a rule. He kept walking, scanning the edges of the illumination while we stood frozen. Shadows slid just beyond what the beams could touch. Shapes moved with the caution of predators who knew the distance they weren't allowed to cross. George didn't look at us when he spoke again. "Don't look back." His voice carried something weightless and heavy at the same time. Not fear, not urgency, just a tired familiarity, like he'd said these words before, and they didn't work then either. He motioned toward the truck. Aaron bolted toward it first. He didn't hesitate. He didn't check behind him. He almost tripped climbing into the passenger door, but caught himself on the handle. I followed, boots stumbling through the dirt as my legs tried to keep up with my heartbeat. Halfway there, I turned. I didn't mean to. It was instinct, a reflex, a mistake. The darkness behind the shed stirred, not wind, not leaves, a shift, something raising itself, unfolding, stretching a limb that bent too many times at the wrong angles. I stopped breathing. Aaron grabbed the back of my jacket and yanked. "Move," he choked out. We reached the truck. I pulled myself into the back seat and slammed the door shut, hands trembling so badly I scraped my knuckles on the latch. Aaron climbed into the front, slamming his door too. The interior was nearly as bright as the outside. George had installed lights inside the cabin as well. The glow filled every corner, no shadows left for anything to hide in. The driver's door remained open. My throat tightened. Austin hadn't made it in with us. My mind raced in a blur. He'd been at the shed door. He'd been right behind us. He must have fallen. Maybe he was. I leaned forward, voice cracking. "We need to get him." George cut me off without turning around. "He's gone." He said it like a fact he'd learned a long time ago. Not cruel, not emotional, not even final. Just true. The engine hummed under us. The floodlights rattled as the truck idled. For 2 or 3 seconds, the world reduced itself to those sounds. No wind, no birds, no footsteps. Just the hum and the rattle. I swallowed and made the mistake of looking over my shoulder. Outside the truck window, the darkness moved. Not slowly, not quickly. Just enough. Like something shifting its weight, watching through a slit of night no beam could reach. George's voice snapped the moment in half. "Close the door." I hadn't realized the driver's door was still open. He climbed in, slammed it shut, and locked it in one rigid motion. The cabin sealed around us, a bright capsule wrapped in a universe of black. He shifted the truck into gear. We moved. The floodlights cut a path across the dead field. Grass bowed under the glow. The shed behind us disappeared into the dark like it had never existed. The world outside the lights didn't behave like normal night. It swallowed light, pressed against it, fought it. The beams pushed back only by force. Something kept pace with us. The truck bumped along the uneven ground, and the lights flickered every time a tire hit a dip or rock. Each flicker made the dark pulse. Each pulse revealed a suggestion of form, tall, narrow, dragging something long behind it. Sometimes it looked humanoid, sometimes it didn't. Sometimes it was just a shadow bending in ways shadows aren't supposed to bend. Whatever it was, it kept to the very edge of the floodlights, never stepping in, never falling behind, testing the boundary. Aaron stared straight ahead, hands gripping the dashboard so tightly his knuckles whitened. He didn't blink. He barely breathed. The glow from the interior light softened his face, but nothing softened the terror in his eyes. I pressed myself back against the seat, chest tight, mind reeling through every moment of the night. Austin leaving the shed, the voices, the thing in the dark, the pattern, the way the world went silent right when the sun dropped. None of it made sense. None of it connected into something I could explain. But being in the truck didn't feel like safety. It felt like a pause, a delay. And the thing outside knew it. George finally spoke again, voice flat, weighted by years. People don't listen twice. He didn't clarify. He didn't explain. He didn't say who he meant, us or Austin or the whole town. He didn't say what twice meant. He didn't say what happened the first time. He just kept his eyes on the road as the truck pushed deeper into the night, the world outside shrinking to a narrow tunnel of stubborn, trembling light. We drove for a long time, long enough for my pulse to settle into something like a rhythm, long enough for the ground to smooth out under the tires, long enough for the flickering to steady instead of stutter. But the thing outside stayed, always at the line, always waiting, always keeping pace. The light held it back, the light, and only the light. I didn't know why. I didn't know how. I didn't know if it would always work, or if the lights could fail, or if they would fail. I only knew one thing. Strong light forced it away. Weak light let it approach. But what was it? Why did it know our names? How did it mimic voices that shouldn't have been anywhere near that shed? I didn't learn any of it. George didn't answer, even if he knew. The night didn't answer either. The truck kept moving, the lights kept burning, and the dark kept following. The truth hovered there, partial, thin, incomplete, like a veil pulled just enough to see shape, never enough to see face. We weren't safe. We were just not dead yet. And somewhere behind us, Austin was gone. The road stretched ahead. The light trembled. The night pressed in. And the thing outside kept pace, waiting for the first crack in the glow. Morning didn't feel like morning. It felt like a temporary ceasefire, something thin and borrowed instead of earned. The light outside George's truck looked washed out, almost gray, like the sun was struggling to push through whatever the night had left behind. None of us spoke while we followed him along a narrow dirt track. Grass brushed against our legs. The air was cool, but not clean, more like the edge of something that hadn't fully left. George didn't explain where he was going. He just moved with the weary patience of someone repeating an old routine. He stopped near the ridge, where the land dipped into a steep drop. There, half pressed into fresh mud, sat one of Austin's shoes. It wasn't torn. It wasn't thrown. It wasn't wedged or stuck. It looked placed, a single footprint beside it, nothing else. Aaron scanned the cliff, the brush, the rocks. Anywhere Austin could have climbed down or stumbled or called out from. There were no marks, no drag lines, no signs of struggle. Just that shoe and mud that looked like it had been disturbed minutes ago, not hours. George didn't touch it. He didn't sigh. He didn't offer comfort or explanation. He turned and walked away. By the time we reached town, the place had already reset. Shops opened, windows rolled up. A woman swept her porch with slow, practiced strokes, pausing only to wave at a neighbor carrying 2 bags of groceries. A man arranged fruit outside a small store. Another adjusted the open sign on his door. No one asked about Austin. No one glanced at us twice. No one acted like the night had held anything unusual at all. The world here ran on a script we still didn't understand. Back at the Airbnb, Aaron packed quietly, folding gear with mechanical movements. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall for a long time, listening to the faint buzz of the overhead light. It felt louder than it should have, like the quiet behind it was waiting for a chance to return. That night, I barely slept. Every sound felt wrong. Every shadow looked too long. I checked the lights twice, then again. I kept glancing at the corners of the room, the thin line under the door, the narrow space behind the dresser. My body braced for a touch that never came. And each afternoon, no matter where I was, I found myself looking at the clock. 5:10, 5:20, 5:25, waiting for the bell. On our last day in town, it rang again. It slipped off its usual time again, only by a minute, but enough to freeze me in place. Aaron stiffened beside the car, but didn't say anything. As we drove out, the reading lamp in the back seat flickered once. A single pulse. The window beside me trembled, a soft tap without wind. I didn't turn around. I didn't have to. I don't think it ever left.